coin code as well. This meeting is being recorded. As well as the error handling thing that we saw. It's basically the same theme that we'll see, and how they have created the contracts from scratch by using reusing those things over and over again. I wouldn't do like a deep dive into like the Aptos coin this thing because it would require us to go through multiple libraries because it has a lot of import statements in it. But just from a very baseline, I just want to once run over it to give an idea of like how does the Aptos coin dot move file look like. And once we are through with that, next thing I want to talk a little bit about today is around contract upgradability. We might do an example around this maybe the next class. And okay, yeah, Alice, what's your question? Yeah, continuing. Yeah, so today we'll basically be using the Aptos SDK, and what we'll do is like similar to what you would have probably seen from using like ethers.js, etc. Right? So whenever you have to actually do a front end call to the smart contract, we end up using all of these libraries where you would have seen that you basically tell what's the contract address to ether.js, you tell which function you want to call, and then if you also want to give it some gas or some value to that particular function as well. Right. So similar to that, we will be using the SDK that can allow us to like call our smart contract, which would then make changes to the Aptos blockchain. Okay. So this is what we'll be covering, and once we have a good idea on this, there are a couple of uh, one second. Let me take a look in the code which file you're referring to. One second. Okay. Yes. So in the acquire the basically the code that I have pushed, if you see the comments, it says when a function accesses a resource using move from borrow global or borrow global mute, then the function must indicate that it acquires that resource. So for move to, it's not a requirement. That being said, you might have seen it still being used in other move to functions. Now there can be like one or two more logic around it because sometimes we use it so that the function that is being like it basically gets inherited by another function that is being called. So if you see in this particular example, one second, we have using this. Yeah, so you might end up seeing in the transfer function that we are using move to, and there it has an acquire statement. But it has an acquire statement because you can see that there's a move from here as well. So that's the reason for only these three you do not require acquire statement. If you do see that a function still has an acquire statement while it's not required, then check if it is calling some other function and there the acquire statement is required. I'm not sure if I'm able to. Let me actually share the screen and explain. That might be better. Give me a second. Okay, that's a good question. For other people, just read once Alice's question. But Alice is basically asking that why is this move to statement being used and then acquire this thing keyword is not being used. So if you move and see this resource docs on the top, it says when the function accesses a resource using move from borrow global or borrow global mute, only then this function needs to indicate that it acquires that resource. And the second part of what I'm telling Alice is that that might be, there might be a possibility that only this is there, but still you might see in some functions acquires is being used. So I'm saying there might be a possibility that inside that function another call is being made to some other function, and for that thing to go through, the acquires is required. So that's why this function is also having that acquires. And another example I wanted to show here is this transfer function. So this has move to. So you might question, why does this have acquires? So here you can see that there's move from here as well. So I'm saying that let's assume that this move from is also some other function itself, that is in which this is a statement. So there you might see the acquire still being present in this function that is calling that particular function. I hope this makes sense. Okay, so now coming back to what were we talking about? Okay. Um, Okay, so I hope everyone has deployed whatever contracts, etc., we have run the last time. So I want to go over first of all this Aptos, this coin.move thing, right? So give me a second, let me show you how this looks like. Mm, mm, mm. So also let me share my screen to this other tab. Okay. Yeah, so anytime you have any questions about how are things working, so you would have seen our move.toml file that we are actually just getting stuff on this Aptos framework. So this is where we are actually importing all of our standard libraries, vector, signer, blah, 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 whatever we are using is coming from here. So anytime you have a doubt in how things are working, best place is to just open this and see what is happening. Some error you're coming across, you don't know what this is, just do a dot and just search it off and you will find the error. And also in the docs you can find whatever there is. But this I personally feel is a better way of finding things because you get more clarity. It might take more time to understand, but okay. Here I think it's maybe under this or this. Let me check where I can find the uh, okay, the token.move here, but there's Aptos coin.move as well. Let me see which one. Okay, this one has a lot of things. Okay, let's not. Might be a bit complicated. Let's go to the Aptos coin one if possible. Okay, it's not here. Let's see the standard library then. Okay, not here as well. Framework and sources. Okay, so here's Aptos coin.move, and there's actually a base coin.move as well. So there's a base coin.move. So if you see, we are using that base coin.move over here. Um, So I'll just very quickly go over this. Just observe that basically the same things are used over and over again in at any of these codes that you see, right? So we're talking about this Aptos framework. We're using some standard libraries. Again, for understanding all of this, we have to go over a lot of different libraries. So I'm not getting into that. What I do want to show you is that it's more or less what we have learned. Like that, this is all of the errors that has been defined. If you see, these errors are basically around certain balance restrictions that are there. If the coin hasn't been registered, um, some coin information is not published, or it has already been published and we are trying to change it. If the address is mismatching, so this is to basically for any person to like set up a new coin. So coin store is frozen, name like name restrictions that we have, symbol restrictions that we have over this, right? So and then we are also setting what it is. So this is just a simple struct with store which has defined with whatever value. So this is basically what you see also when you are trying to run. If you remember, we were running some operations for which we had to publish, and then we had got this thing like, do you want to publish for this gas, blah blah blah, and then we do a yes, and then basically a value then from 1000 something goes to like 99 something 864 blah 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 whatever. So this is this value that is being reflected over there in terms of what is left, and then they are defining like different types of basically like coins, and then like they have defined this coin store, which under this has this coin type. And again, like whatever events are present over there to like keep a record of that. So it's like and then the coin info is basically just information where we are doing the whole name, symbol, all of those things. So they have just created a library with a lot of base libraries, and then just abstracted things over it. So if you start studying this deeply, you'll be able to understand that what is happening over here. And events that are popped, like whenever a coin is deposited, coin is withdrawn, capabilities that are there, minting, freezing, burning, all of these things. So yeah, as I said, like once we start understanding and we can actually just go read this code, and we'll be able to understand that what is happening. For example, this is a good this thing of how borrow global is actually being used, because we are just doing a balance function here, so we just need the value. We do not need the mutable reference, so we can just do a borrow global over here. And then let's see, is coin initialized, so we are calling the exist function here, which will return in boolean in that particular coin address, if there is the like if it is existing or not, if it is initialized or not, right? So these are things that once we start yeah, as I said, like once we start having certain knowledge of, we can actually start implementing ourselves. Burning here, yeah, as you can see, burning here is also doing something that we can actually do ourselves. It's asserting for checking if the value is already greater than zero or not, and then we're getting a mutable reference, and then we are basically going to just probably like just yeah change this reference value. The coin dot value would probably be subtracted, removed. It would have like something would be happening over here. We'll have to see the libraries to understand what is exactly happening. But it's just running some function making the supply to be zero. And born from, so yeah, just mutable references, all of these deposit. Again, a mutable reference where they're adding some value, and then they're also emitting this event. So they're running this event, emit event, and then they are just like using these events basically to track the struct that we see saw just above in terms of the. Let me show you again. Where is that struct? Mm-mm. Yep. So two structs over here that are just emitting events for us to see. So yeah, so this is basically the way that we can actually start seeing a couple of the code over here and understand how things are actually working. Okay. So now that this is clear, want to take some time to go over upgradability of contracts in Moveland, how that differs from what we have seen in Ethereum and all. So just give me a second. Let me stop sharing the screen and open the screen for the developer docs around upgradability. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay, so so one thing that we want to address here that is a little different when we talk about upgrading packages, modules, and all of this, as compared to the different like examples that you would have seen. Can anyone tell me, like, because you folks have worked on Solidity and all, is that code upgradable? And if how, and if yes, then how is that code upgradable? Like the smart contracts that we write, how does that work in normal Solidity? Does anyone want to share? Okay, so I see some replies here. We make a proxy contract and use the Open Zeppelin library contract upgradable. Second, I see it works on basis of two contracts, proxy and implementation. Proxy contract, every time you upgrade, you get a new implementation contract, therefore by the same proxy contract. Okay. Wow, okay, that's great. Does anyone want to like unmute and talk a little bit about this because it might not be something that people would be able to understand just by this one or two messages. Would love to hear from Ram or Tushar on this.
Yeah. Okay. I can share a little bit of insight on this. You can hear me, Sneha?
Go ahead, Ram.
Okay. So basically, the upgradable contracts in Solidity works on the principle of proxy and implementation contract. So eventually, the moment you deploy the contract on testnet or mainnet, you get eventually one address, which is actually the proxy contract address, right? And you use in your application that same contract address. But under the hood, what OpenJeplin does is it actually creates an implementation contract as well, which is kind of linked with the proxy contract. And proxy contract is very important because it holds all the kind of the whatever the data set you are and kind of storing. It is going to be kind of saved in the slots which is referred by the proxy contract only. Okay, and the moment you kind of try to upgrade the contract, or what it does is actually it creates another implementation contract, and the proxy contract will kind of refer to the new implementation contract, which is having your updated code. And yes, of course, you use OpenJeplin's upgradable contract upgrade package for this. There is a lot of other factors also to consider, but I think that's the short summary that I can explain here.
Yeah, Ram, that was very concise and like a very good explanation. So just to add to what Ram just said, essentially just think of it in a very simple manner. If I have to just explain, think of it that in a way that there are two contracts and one that we use as a client in the code, like whenever front end is communicating, right? And this one does not change. So what happens is that the you have one contract that you created and a new one that you maybe changed some functions, you did some XYZ things and you created it again. So the client contract that is being the address that is being shown or exposed, that won't change. So that is because our first contract was pointing to that. The implementation contract was pointing to that, and now that pointer has changed, and now something else is pointing to our client contract, the one that is visible. So in that manner, the address is not changed. So this is the reason why we are able to kind of actually not upgrade anything. So what I mean by this is that in solidity and all of this, what we are just changing is that pointer essentially. So we are not actually changing or actually upgrading the contract code. It does not break anything from the client's point of view because the address is still the same, and that's the way that this is working. But in move, when we are talking about upgradability, it actually involves changing that code and not this pointer thing that we are doing over here. So this is the reason why we are basically learning a little bit around the upgradability aspect, which basically talks about this particular compatible mode. So I just want to show you this particular thing. So yeah, so here whenever we're talking about upgrade policies, so this is defined in the way that it needs to be backwards compatible. So what we mean by this is that the upgrade is only accepted if there is a guarantee that no existing resource, storage, or public APIs are broken by the upgrade. Which goes back to a point that this is important because we are actually modifying and actually upgrading the code. So this means that whatever functions etc that you have created, so everything would, what would happen is that everything will be compiled to the bytecode, right? So everything, every function then would have basically like a hash value, which it's like, this is the function's hash value, this is the function's ID in that sense. Okay, so whenever you are creating something new over there, if you modify the signature, if you modify certain things, then you would not get the same hash value. So you have to do it in a manner without breaking things. And this is that backwards compatible constraint here, which focuses primarily on two things here. So yeah, for primarily two things. So for storage, all old struct declarations must be the same. So you cannot modify the old struct. So this ensures that the existing state of storage is correctly interpreted. So new structs can be added. So this is the thing that I'm talking about. You cannot break that existing state of storage by changing that, because then the hash functions and everything would also get modified by whatever change you make. And for APIs, all existing public functions must have the same signature as before. And new functions can be added as it makes sense, right? Like whenever you're adding new things, it's not a problem to add them to as more functions or something. But if you're trying to modify the existing state of storage for the structs or for the functions, then it's a problem, and then it won't be backwards compatible. So this is the manner you can actually create a compatible, upgradable move contract. And here is how you can actually do it. We might do it maybe in a later class. Today, just want to go over the fundamentals for this. So this is basically the move.toml file. We have already seen it quite sometimes, and it talks about just keeping this upgrade policy over there and a version that you're defining. So whenever you are basically changing this, the only thing you need to do is republish the module with the same address. So it will automatically like republish it, and yeah, like with the same address essentially, right? So this is the only change that you need to do to make it happen. And yeah, so whenever you will try to do it, it will check the compatibility for it and it will abort if it's not compatible. It will give you some error. Yeah, if you want, you can try this as well, or we can again take this up in a later class as well. So yeah, just wanted to talk about this a little bit around upgradability, how that works in MoveLang, and how it's a bit different than what we have seen. This is actually upgrading the contract and not the pointer reference stuff that we are doing with other languages, right? Okay, so now that we have this upgradable thing out of the way, I think this is time for us to get started with the Aptos SDK stuff. Okay, let me actually just give it a search here. Okay, so for some reason, I haven't worked with TypeScript before. But I have my previous code of JavaScript SDK. I'm not sure if it will work for you now or not when you install, because I probably have some previous version of all of this stuff. But yeah, so this is basically how we can use it. They have a couple of different SDKs available. There's TypeScript, there's Python, Rust, Unity, all of these things over here. But the base idea would again always more or less be the same, of us. Basically, what we'll do today is we will create a contract. I will share the contract with you. I feel like that might be a better way to do this. So we'll just create a very simple counter contract, just countering, incrementing a normal counter. And what we'll then try to do is that we will try to publish this module. So this module will be published under some particular address. That's the address that we have been doing, like unmove.toml, the my address, my ADDR that we have been using, right? So it will be published under some contract, and then we will be using this TypeScript or this JavaScript SDK to communicate with this contract and do certain things with this contract. Okay, so this is the more or less what we'll be doing today. And when we try to do things on the SDK as well, we will end up more or less creating accounts through the SDK, funding accounts, faucet funds through the SDK. So one thing that you can do right now is, first of all, just run this particular command. And yep, I think we are good to go. For the CLI, you folks have already have the CLI installed. So you can just install this npm package, and we can basically move ahead. Again, I'm not sure if this will work. The JS script that I have will work for you or not, because my version might be a bit outdated than yours. But yeah, let's check it out. Not sure. So yeah, one thing that just install this Aptos npm package, and you can just write in the chat yes when you folks have installed it up. Okay, I can see Wave has installed it. I'll wait for a couple of more yeses, and then we can actually try out more stuff as well. Okay, hi folks. I see very few people that have said yes or done. Yeah, Alice, I haven't told what to do after npm install Aptos because some like people haven't responded yet. If they have installed. If you folks have installed Aptos, then I can move with the next steps. So I think for the next step, let me just share the contract itself with you. Uh, Give me a second. I'm just gonna copy paste this counter contract with you. Counter.move contract. I'm giving you the entire contract and I'm just gonna share my screen. I'm not sure if okay, maybe Zoom is not allowing me to copy this contract. Okay. Okay, let me send it to you as a file. It's not allowing me to because maybe the characters are too much. Okay. Second. Okay, can you see this counter.move file that I've sent? I'll also share my screen and show you this file, and we can just go over the functions a little bit. Okay, so I've sent you this entire file, counter.move. This is basically the file that we'll be doing using, and I'll just go over this. This is very similar to what we have done previously. Very simple contract that we'll be seeing. Tell you what the differences are here though. So first of all, we see this model counter address. You can replace this with my address as well. Whatever you have, howsoever you have defined it in your move.toml file. For reference, I hope you can see my file over here. Um, so this is like a different this thing I've done. You can basically just make it my address of. I hope this is visible. Let me see if the screen is visible. Okay, so now what we see here is the signer and the debug. standard libraries that we are using, a struct which has key and store, which means it's basically a resource, and we have a value attached to it, which is an unsigned 64 integer value. We have defined an init function to initialize, where we have the account, the signer object, and what we are doing is that we are just attaching this particular counter resource, giving it a default value of 0 to this particular account. Self-explanatory. Again, I would not get too much into it. Again, this is the example for using move underscore two, but we are not using the acquires keyword. Okay. Then we have this increment function over here, which is taking a object, it is acquiring from counter. Because we are doing increment, we have to get a mutable reference, so we are doing a borrow global mute over here. And then because this particular function accepts an address and not the actual like signer, so that's the reason we have to first run a address off over this, and then we can just increment this value by one because it's a counter, right? Then we have defined another function here known as increment by. This function basically is similar to this function. Only difference is that instead of incrementing by one, we are incrementing by a particular value that we can provide over here. So as an unsigned 64 int, we are providing this value. And our function is basically the same, except that this next line where we are actually doing a counter.value, we have made it counter.value plus whatever increase is there. Okay. Okay, so I think these functions are clear. I'm just gonna check the chat once if anyone has any questions, or should I proceed? Let me know if this is fast paced or not, or whatever. I can slow it down a bit. Um, yeah, let me know in the chat if I should continue. Cool. I see a yes from Alice. Uh, Anyone else wants to say something? Telil is saying all good. I see a couple of more folks here. Akhilesh, uh, all okay. Amrish is saying all okay. Sulekha is in class today. See Sulekha. Okay. Um, all good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so coming back to our function. So then we have defined another entry function over here. Okay. So this entry function has an init counter. So if you see our previous examples, the ones that we were doing on VS Code, so whatever these kind of functions we had defined, entry functions, we were using some test account and we were doing a Aptos move test over it, if you remember, right? So that we can just run this particular module and we can basically see what output comes right over there. And we were just passing in that test function some particular account. But here we are not using these as test functions because these are functions which we actually want to be called through our module. So we are not defining it as a test function because we are not looking for an immediate output here. Instead, what we want is through our particular SDK, we communicate with these functions, and there the account or the signer object comes through the account that is calling that particular function. Right. So that's the reason we are not having this hashtag test and account is equals to at the rate 0x1, 0x42, whatever over here. Okay. And here we have the self this thing which basically just reflects that we are the ones like whatever the account is being called, we are the ones that are calling that, whoever is calling that function is initializing. Okay, so here we are just setting the init function, that is the function that we have defined over here. So we are just saying that to self the person or the like basically the account, whoever is calling gets this resource attached to it. Okay, and then we have said something like self increment. Again, this is increment counter, which means that it will be incremented by one. So here, if you notice that we are using acquires counter here. So you might question that, okay, why are we using acquires counter here? Again, this is basically because it's calling this increment counter function, right? Okay. Uh, Sorry, it's the increment function. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's calling this increment function over here, right? Which is doing a borrow global new. So it this one has an acquires, which means that this one also needs to have an acquire because it's calling that. So that's yeah, that's one thing over here. And then a very similar function, we have this increment counter by, which is taking again account and whatever increase is there, and doing the increment by account and whatever increase is over there. Okay, so yeah, this is like whatever stuff, basic stuff over here. And then we have this last function over here, which is public entry fund get counter. Okay, so what this is doing is that it's just taking whatever the account is. It's doing a borrow global, so it's able to just get the value because it's similar to the balance function that we just saw in the coin.move example. That is just what we are trying to print over here, just like print out whatever the value is of the counter. Okay, so this is more or less a very simple module that we have defined called counter. Again, you can, if, after we learn whatever is happening in this SDK, you can essentially go back and use whatever modules we have already defined. If you remember the collection module that we defined or the game star module that we defined, you can go back, you can remove the test functions in the first line from all of these entry functions, and you can actually rerun the examples by calling it through the SDK rather than running it as a test function. So yeah, this is just for our understanding more or less. Okay, I'll take a moment, I'll pause, and I hope everyone has installed Aptos by now, the module. That is a requirement. Um, Next step for us is basically just going to be calling actually this particular counter. We have not something yet in terms of our test functions because we are doing test functions. Um, we had not basically run the publishing the module. So if you remember in the very first class, we did this quantum network thing. And then I think we did do something where it got published, where like we had to accept a transaction and it got published. But we haven't done that through the CLI, so we will do that as well now in the CLI. So yeah. Okay, so there's a question by yeah, one second. There's a question by Tehlil and Ram. Uh, is entry keyword in more equivalent to external keywords already? Can you talk about entry keyword once, please? Okay, so we did cover this in a previous class, but just to talk about this again, this entry keyword is, I would say, not exactly like external because when we are talking about external functions, it means that it can only be called externally. It cannot be called internally, right? But entry function, I would say, is more of readability for us rather than the other way around because entry functions can be called internally as well. So there can be some function that calls another entry level function inside of it. That is allowed. It's not like it would throw an error. But for external functions, by its definition, it is only meant to be that way. So entry function, I would say, is more for our readability sake. We actually, I have a link as well on the Aptos doc, which basically talks about it maybe in some better language than what I'm using. Let me just show you over here. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, let it load. Yeah, entry modifier. Yep. So I'm just gonna copy paste this over here. So here we have just mentioned that it's just that it can be invoked as a script, but it has also mentioned that an entry function can still be called by other move functions. So they are not restricted to that case. But if you look at external, it's restricted to that case that it should not be allowed. So that's the reason why I said I think it's more of a readability sort of a thing. Um, but yeah, it's to mark that the function will be called at the beginning of execution, or this is the main function of the module where programs should start executing. So that is important. Why? Because when we are running Aptos move test, then by automatically it calls that function because it identifies that this is the entry function, right? So in that case, it's important, but it's not restricted, like just like how I mentioned, right? Okay. So coming back to our code. Okay, was this clear, Ram and Tehlil? And also coming back to our this thing, I want other folks to also respond if what we have discussed this far around the entire counter code. I have shared the code, the file, and I have also asked you folks to install the Aptos npm package. So before, like once that is done, only then we would be able to proceed further. Hi folks. Akhilesh, that is you. I things globally, or I maintain like a particular version, and for that I usually as well. Uh, you, you can do it if you want. And I guess if you have any, and it would be good if you can do version on Node. That's the version I usually go for because most of the things over that version. Hi folks. Sorry, my system completely comment in the chat if we are through with the Aptos NPM package. Yes, we can start with actually writing our code. Is my voice better now? Hello, hello. Is my voice better? Hello. Oh, okay. I just got all of these messages right now at once, 4 5 in the chat. Okay, perfect. So let's then continue. Can you folks let me know if the counter.move module, if you have written it, and is if you have installed the npm aptos package. If that is done, we can move ahead. I see Wade's message saying yes. We'll wait for the folks to also put a message. Are you on board with this? Can we move ahead? It's stuck because it's running things again, but let's wait. So you folks would have added this counter.move. You can just run a normal Aptos move compile. Uh, taking a bit long for me. My system just shut off and I've just restarted it. So I'll just wait for a bit for it to get installed and then compile. Okay. Uh, so you can run basically Aptos move compile just like in our previous examples. So yeah, it's just built and then publish. So I am able to write Aptos move publish directly because in this particular this thing I've actually spent up a new project with this SDK example. I will add all of this code in our learn move repo as well. So I'm able to run this, but otherwise I think the way you're supposed to do it, I'll just run a help command. Uh, Yep. So you can just add this particular and then point it to the package. So assuming that you're in this folder with the move.toml file, I think it would be something like sources slash whatever you want to call it. Yeah, okay, it's not giving this. Maybe just a counter or more. Okay, not this. Let me actually also check what's the name of my file. Mm, this is a very good possibility of using. So I think it's just this. Okay. Let me see where we are in this particular directory structure. Why it's not letting me push? Change it to my address like in Toml file. Uh, okay, this was an error that I'm gonna say. Okay, yeah, that's correct. I am still not sure why this is not letting me do this. Quite weird. Mm, let me actually see. If you just run the Aptos move publish, it will end up publishing all of your modules if it's not in the if there's only yeah, if there's only one, then it'll publish only one. But if there are multiple, you'll have to add this transaction directory inside the Aptos directory. I'm not sure which directory it's in because there's move.toml, which is where we are prompts that I'm passing it, which I'm not sure. Let's give it one last shot. I'm not sure this will work. Yep. Okay, I'm not sure why this is not taking this. But to just run an Aptos move publish, which will basically just ask us to publish this, to which I'll just say yes. You're submitting this transaction and boom, it's done. We have published this module. Um, so yeah, we can actually just use this transaction. Looks like so. I'm just gonna stop sharing the screen and then I'll just give this command to you and I'll stop sharing the screen so you folks can actually just run this off, try it, and we can then see what the published. Yeah, perfect, perfect. So we can actually just go to this Aptos scan thing. So let me just open that up, and I'll also share the link with you. Okay, so this is the Explorer, sharing it here, and also sharing my screen. Yep, perfect. So this is the Aptos Explorer. This is on DevNet. Just copy this, paste it over here, wait for it to get the transaction. Yep. So you have to load. So yeah, this is my transaction called by this sender account. Um, and what we are doing here, you can go to the changes to see. So as you can see here, we have our my counter uh, module with this particular functions. We have get counter, we have increment, increment by, increment counter, all of these functions that are there that have been mentioned over here. Um, this is just this is basically for our main module that we are writing over here, which is counter. And the structs, etc., all of them are stored. So when I mentioned right in the upgradability thing, that's the reason we should not be modifying this. Because when you modify this, the way it is sent to the bytecode, it will change. But if you're adding here, it's just an addition to this array. So that's the reason we should not be modifying this. So if you see all of these functions over here, and I'm actually just gonna open this as well to show you. Get counter, increment, this is increment by, this is increment counter, increment counter by init. Yep. Seven functions here. If you go and check your counter dot move file, you'll also see the seven functions over there. I'll just pause for a minute for you folks to give me a response if things make sense to this point, or if they don't. Mm. Is there anything that you're not able to understand, folks? Feel free to ask. Okay, I see one message. Error, unexpected errors. One second. Where are you getting this, Akhilesh? What's the thing that you're running and you're getting this? What I have multiple move file and want to publish contract in one file. That's what I was mentioning. Like, how can we do that? The package directory thing, but it's not working, at least for me. I don't know which directory it is in. It's not, I tried four or five different options, but it's not taking any of those. What I can suggest is that just spin up, just make a copy of that, remove all of the other move files and just run it. In the sources, just keep this one counter.move file and just run it. That would be fine for now. Okay, I'll wait for a minute for you folks to attempt this out. And also, I have one request for you folks to make. I see a couple of you folks that are dedicated and are learning in the process. Initially, there were a couple of people who mentioned me as well as social in some social media post, and that really helped us folks. So would appreciate like whatever we have learned since then. If you folks can make a Twitter or a LinkedIn post tagging us and Social 3, Web3 Learn, just mentioning whatever you have learned up to this point, which would be around the lines of creating resources, uh, communicating, error handling in Aptos, the resources API, signer, address of, contact upgradability in Move, and then today we are running around Aptos SDK stuff as well. So would really, really, really appreciate it if you folks can take some time and make a post around what we have learned this far. I hope that in the next classes we can also go much deeper and actually, if we have time, I would love to go through some sample codes for staking and token swap and all of these sort of things as well. Would be interesting to see how certain Aptos based projects have built that from scratch. So yeah, so would appreciate if you do this. This is a request from my end, especially for folks like Ram, Alice, Tehlil, Ved, Vijay, Akhilesh. Uh, yeah. I see you folks. Sulekha is not here today, but yeah. Can we do it as an assignment for weekend on a swapping contract or sticking? Yes, yes, yes. We will be doing that. Like, so one day I want to take just some time to go over through the base codes of a couple of different projects. And once we said that, what we can do is that we can keep certain ideas. Like, these are a couple of ideas, and everyone can choose and build something different. um, you can even choose something like two people can maybe even choose one same thing, and you both can actually discuss and build different implementations of it. I'm just giving an idea, but yeah, I think that would be really cool if we can do something like that. And it would be beyond what this move thing we are running, because all of this is new to me as well. Like, but if we can actually start building things like this, that would be like very super, because we have gone beyond the very basic stuff of move, right? That is what you will find most of the people who are building right now in the ecosystem. And with social tree also, we are very into Aptos and Movelang for that matter. So would love to build out things that can actually show developers capability going beyond the basic in Move. And then, because we are a hiring platform, so people who are a little bit better in Move, because as I said, it's a new language. Normally people don't know much, so if you are even a little bit better in Move than the rest, that would give you an edge in getting hired in any sort of Move ecosystem companies. And that being said, Aptos is putting in a lot of investments in a lot of companies to right basically in Moveland to build on Aptos blockchain. So there are a lot of newer startups that are popping up where you can basically be the first set of like individuals who will have a good understanding of Move to get hired over there. So yeah, I think these are all there are a lot of possibilities around this. Depends on how we can like how well we can execute on this part. And then yeah, like whatever can come out of it, that would be very interesting for us to see as well. I would love to see some good projects come out of this cohort. That would be like very, very awesome. Yeah, and even like smaller things, like if you remember in our initial class, we someone mentioned this VS Code thing. That's the plugin is not working as expected. Even smaller things, because that can create a lot of difference for any developer who wants to get started. We do not account for that, but it does. It really does make a lot of difference. Okay, so perfect. So this was a little bit around what can be done in this cohort. Now coming back to okay, how did I start my journey of building social tree? I was actually I was working as a smart contract developer at that time with a gaming company, and I was doing a couple of different things. I worked at BuildSpace, I worked at Polygon for a bit, and then I was doing the smart contract role. And I have a more generalist sort of a skill set. So yeah, and then I had a lot of these founders. It was like peak bull and approach and ask if I can help refer my friends, etc. For opportunities and for roles. And that's when I thought that okay, why is no one solving for this? And it's like a very like visible problem statement that okay, they need good like people to build out things for Web3. But the problem being, and the irony being, that all of this is public through your wallet activity. I can understand if you are actually in Web3 or not. But no one is building along those lines, and that's how we started building Social Tree, and it's been quite a roller coaster ride since we started, because it's my experience as a first time founder, and through this I have learned leaps and bounds. Like, it's an understatement to say that I would not want it any other way in terms of the learning I've had in my life. Nothing compares to the kind of things you see on a daily basis, and you kind of just get used to it. Like everything, things not going your way, things seeming very, very difficult, um, things moving slow, everything that you can possibly imagine will happen. And you will make a ton of mistakes. Like if today someone asks me, I can probably point out like 20 different things I could have done differently. Yeah, but that's the thing. Like you will learn a lot through this entire process. Um, and also your one more thing I want to talk about here. I know it's not relevant to the class, but still, your entire company of people that you hang out with will change drastically in this process, and you will surround, like, people who are doing something that you feel is creating certain impact in anything, right? So, and you will want to grow, like you will grow at their pace. You will be surrounded by people who will be growing at by leaps and bounds, and that will motivate you personally to grow by leaps and bounds. So yeah, that will change, and that's a very good personal thing, at least for me, not just from a company building standpoint, but just from a mentality shift that has happened. Nothing seems too scary, or nothing seems too like bleak. It's like, we'll manage, you'll see, ho jayega, something will come out of it. So that really changes the way you think about things. Okay, that was a very short TED talk that I have done during this class. But okay, coming back to this particular yeah, this particular Aptos Explorer thing, how we can see this seven functions that are exposed if you compare it with your counter.move file, and how that relates. Are we good till this point, folks? Because now we have our move module published. The next step that we have to do now is to actually write a script, a JavaScript file that can enable us to communicate with this particular move module. I hope everyone has created, like, basically you can just create a simple node project, and in that we will basically just add this script. So a very simple node project, we just will just create one file, like one index.js file, and there we can just write our code. So okay, um, I'll wait for a minute, and I will also, in the meantime, show you how this counter.js file would look like. Okay, so I have just shared my counter.js file now, Explorer link. Okay, this is basically my link. What you can do here is, after this transaction, you can just paste your hash, and yeah, that's pretty much how we can do it. Cool. I'm actually just going to share this JavaScript file with you folks. So I have a very simple setup over here. I have the counter.js file, I have just my package.json log file, and the modules. That's it. Nothing else is set up here. There is this .env package which I have added here, but I don't think um, it's yeah. You might need to install it. Although I have directly passed for some reason my private key over here. Do change this line. Make you can maybe change this for this to come to your EMV and not being passed like this directly. This is not good practice, definitely. So yeah, mm, I've just shared my JS file. Do not push your private keys, folks, in GitHub. By the way, in whenever you are like trying to just submit all of this stuff, just keep this blank or something. But this is more or less our file. I will now go over it one uh, like line by line. But before that, just wanted to set up first of all your node project, like just an empty node project. with just this counter.js. You can name it index.js, whatever you want. Just set this up and let me just like type yes or something in the chat so I know that okay, you're clear up till now. Yeah, Tyrell, that's what I mentioned. That what you can just do is for now you can just create a copy of this, remove all of those move files from the sources folder, and just publish this one. But otherwise, you can basically do the package directory thing, which was not working for me on this Aptos move publish command. I'm not sure where they are actually in terms of the route to call this. So, but yeah, you can specify through this which particular package you want to call. So it will just publish for that. I hope that makes sense. For now, you can just remove from sources and just keep one file over there as a hack. I'm just waiting for a few moments for you folks to do like publish the module and keep the node uh, repo ready with this particular counter.js file. You can name it whatever you want, but this is basically the whatever is going to be the file content. So I'm just gonna wait for you folks to just do this, say yes, say something, whatever. Okay. Okay, hi. Okay, I see some folks have already run this. Okay, there's no need for you to run this. I will first go over the code. Um, Before that, okay, as I was trying to publish data, this is move abort. Module missing cannot delete a module that was published in the same package. Okay. Uh, I will have to see your code, Vijay, once to see what has happened. Um, I think you tried to do that sources thing, something along those lines, and then a module was removed, like basically from that, and now when you're trying to run it, you're getting this error. But yeah, your module has been published. That means, can you give me what you can do over here is Vijay? You can just go to this Aptos Explorer, explorer.aptos.labs.com, and paste your this thing. Uh, just go here, paste your address, your normal my ADDR address. Okay. Once you do that, you can see all of your transactions from there. So just open the transaction, try to see where you can find this published module. You will be able to see it because I think you have already published it, and now you're trying to republish something without with removing certain modules, so you're getting this error. Not sure. I will have to again, as I said, check your code. Okay. I can see people have run this already. I'll wait for a few more minutes and then I'll go over this code and what is happening here. Okay, I would love to hear from a couple of more folks. So Ram has run this, Alice has run this, uh, okay. Taylor has run this, Akhilesh has run this. Okay. Cool. Then I think maybe we can just go over this code. Okay, so this code is actually quite simple. I don't think I need to explain this a lot. So again, first line is basically us just getting our package. Second and third line focuses on what node and what faucet we are hitting. Because we are on DevNet, this is basically the node and the faucet links that are there. You can actually also find it from the Aptos doc thing if you want to change it. Give me a second, let me fetch that and give that to you for reference. 1 second. It's probably yep. So if you just see this guide, it has a couple of the links that are being used. Let me stop sharing the screen and show you over here. There is my window. Okay. So if you see over here, you can see the production network access, which talks about DevNet, and the links that we have used, testnet and mainnet. So you can just get those links from here essentially. I'll stop sharing and go back to my code. Um, okay. So, okay, coming back to this piece of code, next we are just defining the const aptos coin. So, where is this big address coming from? It's basically you can find this from the published modules of Aptos. It's talking about first we have 0x1, which is a standard library, then it has coin, then it has coin store, and under that we are talking about this particular type, the Aptos coin. So coin store, and this will take whatever is the coin type, and for this we're talking about Aptos coin. So we are talking about so this basically talks about a coin on Aptos blockchain, and this talks about particular apt coin, that is APT coin, Aptos's native coin that we are talking about here. So how can you find like what it should be called? I think again from our example docs you should be able to get the reference. Let me just see where you can find it. Give me a second. Yep, so you can actually see a couple of the functions, etc. Reason that we discussed being defined over here. But yeah, this is us just using a published module more or less. So now what we are doing is that we are just saying we have this new client that you're defining with this particular node URL. Then we are defining the faucet client. If you have used Ethers.js, this is similar to what we do in the beginning there as well, where basically we use some sort of any sort of like RPC or something that can allow us to do the same thing. And then we have then we're defining the private key. So one account is something that we are basically an existing account that we are just using here. And in order to invoke that particular account, we need this particular private key. So we are just passing this as a hex string over here. And then from that, we are just getting this particular Aptos account. Okay, so this is the account really associated with this particular private key existing account, right? And then what we are saying is that just run an await function where we are funding this account with this is the address and this is the whatever amount. So you might ask that, okay, where are you getting all of these functions from? How are you using them? So all of this is there in the SDK reference that you can see. Let me share my screen and show you the reference as well for this. Give me a second. Okay, so I'm just gonna stop sharing and show you where you can find all of these things. 1 second. Yeah. So can you see this? Am I paste this here? Okay. So if you see, this is the reference SDK reference. You can find this from the Aptos developer docs. Like you can navigate and get here. So here, if you see, we are seeing the faucet client and the fund account function. So this is the like whatever the definition is, it's here. You can just use this and yep, just say whatever amount you want, what's the address, and it will and we'll just do an await because it's returning this promise, right? So yep, this is the function. Now moving back to our code, we can see all of the other functions from here as well. That's why I'm not putting a lot of like showing this in properly because you can just read and go through that. Okay, so then we are just logging this account, which is basically what you can see in your output, the first line. Then second line is us getting this account resource, like this particular account's resources. So again, this is a function that you can see where we're just passing the address and then we can see the resources around it. The next line talks about through this resources, we are trying to find the resource which has the type Aptos coin. Okay, so this is important in the sense that because if you see like if you have multiple resources defined, like what would be the resources in this particular uh, case? Like it, like any account can have depending on whatever modules you have already published, it can have multiple resources. But if you remember from our previous class, any account can have at most a resource, one resource of a given data type. Okay, so it will just have one of this particular type. It might have some other resources, but this is the one that we are finding. And what we are doing over here is that we are just saying that this particular resource, whatever is the value, it should be this, because we are funded it with this particular amount. But in our case, if you see, it's not going to be true, because we have been using this address for a long time now for a lot of different operations. So you might not get the same numbers as some of you can see in your output. But if it was a fresh account that we would have created, then we would have definitely got this to be like a match, right? So does this make sense up till this point? Okay, perfect. And this next part again is just similar to our Ether JS thing that we do. So now we are just constructing a payload where we have defined that this is type NT function payload. Function is basically this. So how are we getting this? So if you see, this is basically our account address that we have. Then under our account address, the module name is my counter. So we have done colon colon my counter and then a colon colon, which is the exact function name. So we are saying increment counted by over here. So this is the way that we have defined this particular function. Uh, and for the arguments, we are passing this number. So then we are just like, this is basically the standard of how you can generate a transaction and submit that transaction over here, all of these things that you see. So we are just doing the transaction request, client.generate transaction. Um, with the account address and the payload. Then we are signing that particular transaction request with our account one, and then we are submitting that transaction. So this is just the syntax that you can use for the same. And then when you're running a await statement to wait for the transaction, and then we get like basically the hash once this transaction is done. So this is basically the flow of how you can make the call. So yeah, placed it with my hashed account, both values are same. What are you referring to, Akhilesh? Not able to get it. Okay, so this is basically our script which a couple of you folks have already run, and it's working fine for you folks. One thing that you can now do after running this is that you can just, I'll just show it on my Explorer as well. Give me a second. Let's show you how this looks. Okay. Let me take a look. Actually. Okay, I see some folks are pasting their. Yeah, I think the better way would be to check on the Explorer on what has happened. I am also running this example again to see if it's failing for me as well. Uh, um, okay, folks, it is working for me, I think, because my counter value has incremented in my resources. Okay, folks, we have 3 minutes left, and I have Twitter space at 9. So, if you folks can share your code with me, maybe I can help debug there. Okay, please, there's something here. Okay, cool. Let's do this. Maybe we can do the debugging maybe in the first 10 minutes or something of the next class on what has happened. And if not, you can maybe share it with me. Next week, I would not be available for the class because I'm going to the token 2049 event. So next week will be off. I will try to see if I can provide any reading materials or give you folks certain assignments or something to keep you occupied. But yeah, that's more or less what's there. This is my TG ID. You can maybe share your code with me here, but I might not be able to respond because I still have to do a lot of stuff for the event. But yeah, if I do get some time, then I will check and respond back. Okay, that brings us to the end of this class. Uh, Thank you, folks, for joining in. I'll see you then. Shalom. Bye bye.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Also, would appreciate if you folks can help on the post stuff that we discussed.
Sure.
LinkedIn or Twitter, something. Awesome. Take care. Bye. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.